Sounds fun, join us. Come on and join us on the front porch. On the front porch with Randy and friends.
Hello, everybody. I'm Randy Ross with Front Porch Chat with Randy and Friends, coming to you live today from Florella with my good friend Maura Lucchese. She is a local artist, and she has a very interesting story, and we're going to talk a little bit more about her story in just a second, but we are surrounded by her art, and I'm just fascinated with it. Maura, tell us a little bit about yourself, and tell us a little bit how you got started being an artist.
I grew up in Cocoa Beach, Florida, and my mom loved to draw, my grandpa loved to draw, and to keep me busy, they'd give me loose leaf paper, a pencil, and they'd put an object in front of me like this glass, and they'd say, draw it exactly like you see it. And to keep me out of their hair, I would try harder and harder. They'd say, you forgot the little shine there, you forgot this, that. So I started enjoying doing that as a pastime.
How did you get into this particular genre, though? I know you had some things that had happened in your life, and we're going to talk a little bit more about those shortly, but how did you decide that you wanted to go flip through magazines and turn it into art?
I actually started shadowing other artists, and there was an artist in town that was doing collage artwork, and I thought it was really unique, and he held a workshop and invited me to come because I had been doing promotions for him for about 3 years.
Right.
So I took what he told me and then broke all the rules and applied all the rules about portraiture and abstractions and impressionism and conceptual art and came up with my own way of doing things.
But this happened, quite by accident, and I don't want to dwell on it, but if you can kind of get us into your story. Maura and I both are survivors of domestic abuse, and from the very time we started this show, I've been wanting to do a show about domestic abuse, that it doesn't know any socioeconomic status, it doesn't know gender, it doesn't know race. And when I had spoken with Maura and learning her story, she's had a very interesting life. And I want you to kind of share what you're comfortable with regarding just everything, if you will.
Like most people, you get married and have children and purchase homes and start on your journey together. And at some point it went south and it was time for me to leave. Okay. It became a lethal situation where I had several surgeries on my neck and 2.5 years of pain management and physical therapy. So it was a severe attack.
You obviously were attacked by somebody.
Yes. Okay. Yes. And then leaving the relationship, I cut all ties with my former husband and was faced with another form of abuse through the legal system.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what you mean by that?
I was anticipating, as we had talked about, an amicable split for the sake of the children, that things would be easy and we just go our separate ways and remain friends and co-parent as usual. But what I was hit with was a smear campaign in the court system. I was slandered horribly by my best friend of 17 years.
Right.
It was a complete shock. I faced a shark of an attorney, and I was frozen out of the divorce, meaning that the assets were all stripped and hidden, and I was.
And that happens a lot. A lot of women go through that when they have that type of situation.
Right, and it's the part of it that's hard is there's a stigma involved. If you don't get what you thought you might get or what society thinks you would get in a divorce, people think there's something wrong with the woman. I couldn't afford to fight a custody battle, and I had perfect credit, but made myself homeless twice, trying to do what is in the best interest of the children. I'm not even going to say I believe. The best thing for a child is to have access to both parents.
So you became homeless twice while going through the divorce, or?
Once through the divorce and once after, due to continuing litigation. He would not let go. And it wasn't until I let go of that rope and said I can no longer fight that he left me alone. But it was almost like it's being known that this is stalking behavior, actually, and it was very destructive, very damaging, and I had to rebuild my life.
You were married for 14 years.
14 years.
And up until all of this happened, you'd had a pretty normal
I would say they're
marriage?
normal. There were little areas where I would notice that his family members weren't treating me properly, and looking back, I realized they were going on false assumptions because smear campaigns begin long before the split,
Right.
and people anticipate it, maybe even from the beginning.
Sure.
So I I realized much later that his family had the false impression of me, and that it's easy to have a false impression of somebody who's harried and losing their mind because their life is falling apart. So,
And did you feel that at any point did you actually feel like you were losing it?
oh my gosh, Randy, I've had, that song 19th Nervous Breakdown,
Right.
you know, I've had exponentially more so. Um, it's been constant adaptation for 8 years.
And we talked off camera, and if you're comfortable with it, you weren't sure that you would live through this whole process. You weren't sure how you were going to survive.
No. My body and mind were overwhelmed continuously. Now there are more things that went on. If it was just a divorce, that would have been manageable. But divorce plus custody battle plus smear campaign is more than any human being could handle. Lots of women take their own lives because of this, and I'd be lying to you if I said that didn't cross my mind several times on a regular basis over the years. I lost my home, my family, my marriage, my children, my nest egg, my reputation, my credit. Everything was gone.
Did people around you, because that's one of the best things I think that victims do is they put up a shield and no one really knows what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Did people around you see all of this, or were there any signs, or were you just really good at keeping face and no one ever got to see that?
In the period of time from the attack to the time where I was divorced, I tried to keep it under wraps. I didn't want people to know. I bore a lot of shame.
Because it's embarrassing.
I found
You
it very
feel
embarrassing.
It's not really embarrassing, but you do feel embarrassing.
I felt embarrassed because this is my husband. This is the man I chose to have children with and to purchase 5 homes with. I mean, how could I make such a wrong mistake?
Absolutely.
So I took on a lot of shame. Plus, I found that because there was a smear campaign, felt as if I constantly had to defend myself.
Sure.
And I'm still like that, Randy. I'm sorry. I'm still like that. And I wish I wasn't.
I've watched her on Facebook posts. She's still like that.
Now, Facebook is a whole nother story.
We'll talk about that.
But there was more. There was there's a lot that happened. A lot of things that
Was the system protective of you once you acknowledged that that something was going on? Did you feel that, because a lot of victims there are certain services you can reach out to here. Did you feel comfortable doing that? Did you feel like you were also victimized by the system?
Yes, and we didn't discuss this. The system is not set up, and maybe it's getting a little bit better. And friends like my girlfriend Kelly, who went through a similar type experience, are making strides and getting investigators on specific cases so that other children don't have to suffer, and women can feel free to leave a marriage that's destructive to them without the threat.
That's a very tough part. So I can only imagine the fact that you can't see your children and all those kind of things must be very hard as a mother.
It's absolutely outrageously, unequivocally the worst thing you can think of. If you think of the movie Schindler's List, what was the part that made you cry?
Right.
When the little girl was separated from her family.
Right.
Or when we had the tsunamis in the Philippines, the story that replayed over and over was the gentleman who had to let go of his daughter while they were drowning.
Right.
This is the worst experience a human being can have, and it's being played out in our family court system. And nobody wants to talk about it because of the shame it brings onto us.
Okay, so you come out of the divorce.
Right.
It was a rough one, right?
Yes.
And what was next?
Next, I decided, if I was going to continue, I had to forgive. So I threw myself into what is forgiveness, because forgiveness is not just forgetting or a Pollyanna experience where we pretend that nothing's happening. What forgiveness is that we decide to change our minds from the negativity that surrounds us, that we sometimes can't escape, we can't do anything about.
Right?
We've learned to be helpless around because there's really nothing you can do at a certain point. And turn the channel like on the old radios with the little knob.
Right.
turn
Right.
it to a love and beauty channel. So if you love and you surround yourself with beauty and you focus on beauty, that is actually what forgiveness is. Now, if another human being comes to you and says, I am sorry, and they are actually sorry, they're not just saying it to
Right, right.
manipulate you, but they're contrite, and then you have the responsibility to offer them, that forgiveness and grace.
Sure.
If they don't, you don't. Randy, you don't.
Tell me about the next relationship then that you got in. Was it very similar to your ex-husband? What was it, a new and different type of person?
It was an absolute 180 from the marriage I was in. I was encouraged to express myself, to be exactly who I am. When I cried, it was okay. When I screamed, it was okay. When I cussed, it was okay. When I sat there like a pious church lady, it was okay. Anything I wanted to be, I could be. And that was surfer Dave Marcello, who was a local TV personality as well.
Right.
He had his own radio show called Alternative Static, and he was a very beloved person in the community, and we had a lot in common. So he was very accepting, but it's hard to talk about this.
Okay. Take us through it slowly, because this was someone that you cared about greatly, and obviously things happened. So
what happened is one day I was coming into his home, and he was downstairs at the neighbors, talking to the neighbors, telling the neighbor that he was expecting me. His phone wasn't working. He's going across the street. And all of a sudden, up in his apartment, I noticed the door was unlocked. I walked in the apartment and then saw blue flashing lights, no sirens. And that's when somebody's gone. And so a moment after I walked up into his home, he came out of the neighbors, went running across the street to the 7-Eleven, and was struck by an SUV and killed instantly.
And as I understand it, you went out.
I went out and found the love of my life, twisted on the pavement, and he was already gone. And there was a woman screaming that she had seen the whole thing and that he was gone before he hit the ground. And for the second time in my life, I felt like the heavens were torn open. There was just
I can't even imagine coming upon a person that you love, that you've seen in such a state. You surely went into shock, I would imagine.
It was utter and complete shock. The police officers were trying to speak to me, and I couldn't speak. All I could do was stutter and tell them, try and mouth, I can't talk. And they told me I was traumatized. And a girlfriend came to the scene, and I looked at her and I said, I will never make it through this. Not both those things. My children. I also had a partner. My first boyfriend had passed from AIDS, very, very young. And so losing all those people was, so traumatically. My children, having to leave a marriage because of a traumatic event. It was more than a human being can bear.
And
So,
what fascinates me about your story is, I met you originally at the museum, and I watched what you do with your art and everything, and a lot of people just don't know where all that's coming from. You've also shared with me, though, the love of family, how critically important your family was, and the value system that you had with your family. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because when people go through challenges in their life, they're looking for signs of strength. They're looking for things that are, give me something to hold on to, whether it's a breakup, a loss, who knows what it is. Tell us a little bit about your family.
yes, I call those people anchors, Randy.
Yeah.
And my father and my brother were my anchors. My father and my brother knew my character better than anybody, and they also knew my weak spots. And my 3 months to the day after my fiance passed, I got a phone call that my wonderful father, who had always championed me, who always said, "Why don't you do your art, sweetie? Why don't you do your art?" And I'd be like, I don't have time. Life was intervening.
Sure.
And I got a call that he was found dead in his living room. He was still there when I got there, and he had a heart attack.
That had to be hard, within such a short window of time, to have such an anchor in your life gone. So now you've lost a marriage, you've lost your fiance, and now you lost your father.
Right.
And so how do you survive? Because I'm still surrounded by all this energy.
And children.
And how you and children, your
And
children
children.
as well. I just wonder how you bounce back from something like that.
Well, I thought I was going to die. I really did. I thought that's it. And in fact, my fiance's mother came over and said, "What are you going to do now?" Because he had passed away 4 days after we got engaged. And so we had plans we had made.
So you were planning to get married.
Yes. Yes. And so I said
the
to
good
her,
news, at least you didn't hear the accent or something like that. If there's anything good out of that.
Yeah, right. And she said, "What are you going to do, Maura?" And I said, I'm going to paint till I die. And I thought it was going to be a week.
Mm-hmm.
My system was shutting down completely. I wasn't hungry. Nothing was working. I couldn't sleep. Nothing was working. I'll just say it like that to be polite.
Right.
But my mind was breaking. And then 2 weeks after my father died, it fell upon me because I was my brother's power of attorney. He was in the hospital with a opportunistic brain infection that had put him into a persistent vegetative state.
So this is right after your father passes away.
Right. My other best friend in life, my other anchor, the person who I could talk to. We measured our phone conversations in pee breaks. It's like, hold on, don't hang up, just put that phone down. I don't want you to go.
Right.
And then we come back. So we were extremely close, and he was in this coma, and I had to pull the plug on. I had to remove life support. So 2 weeks after sitting with my father's body, it was 3.5 months after my fiance, I was signing the DNR, do not resuscitate orders for my brother, and watching him suffocate to death. And to the end, he still responded to my voice.
Right.
He still, when I would talk to him, he was still responding to my voice. So it was extremely hard. And I think with this, I've dealt with physical infirmity. I've dealt with slander. I've dealt with bullying. I have dealt with death threats, which continue to this day. I've dealt with
let's go
loss
into
of
that
best
just
friends.
right slightly. Social media can be and we talked about that many times on the show before, how social media can just be it's almost a deterrent to want to communicate with people. It's a wonderful vehicle to be able to promote the wonderful things that you do, but at the same time, it can be really very nasty. How are you, after you've gone through all these different things, now processing someone who still wants to try to hurt you? People do. They do it to me all the time. I get the nastiest messages, like, why are you doing a television show? Why is Betty drinking on the show? Well, Betty doesn't really drink. She may have a margarita here and there, but she doesn't really drink. So, how do you process that too? Because what I'm trying to get to, Maura, is where the strength comes from.
Sure.
Because so many people out there, whether they are male or female, children or adults, they have a difficult time finding the strength. They just give up.
And that's so important. And I think that's why I'm sitting on the porch here with you today,
Right.
because it's not about all the crappy stuff that happened in the past that you can't do anything about.
Right.
And if people want to believe that you're a bad person, you can't change their minds. And if you're having a nervous breakdown, you're going to tip them over into thinking that you're an awful person.
Sure.
So how do you navigate all this? Well, for me, since my father and my brother were gone, and they were the people I could kvetch with all day
exactly.
long, I turned to social media. My give a damn was busted. I had nothing left to lose.
I love that, my give a damn.
There was nothing left to lose, Randy. So what did I do? I got on there and spoke as if I was speaking to my dad, my brother. And people would say, don't put that on there. Don't put that on there. Well, I was declining. I was declining physically and mentally until some friends came along. The local surfer dude, who was a friend of my fiance's, Glenn Lockaby, actually physically came and made for 1.5 years sure that I would be all right and that I was eating right, getting exercise, getting out in sunshine, getting out and going to work. He was the best housewife.
Right.
He was wonderful. And very close friend, and so there were people who came along as angels to help out.
Sure.
And just everyday people, not the people you'd expect.
Right.
So one of the things I was realizing is if I was to survive this situation, I would have to develop a rock solid support system of friends, and they would have to be people who did not wonder whether or not I was telling the truth. I don't have the bandwidth for that.
Right.
I know me. I know I'm telling the truth. So I don't have the bandwidth. Well, but you know, you
Or the
did
time.
this.
Who's
and
got
you
the
said
time
this.
for all that?
No,
I don't have time for it.
I don't. I don't care if people question my character. I don't question my character. Do I fall down? Of course I do.
Sure.
I'm human. But so what I did is I started making friends, and as I found out that friends were not on the same trajectory as me in life, or they didn't want me to succeed, or they were what I call envious discouragers.
Yeah.
And they
Or
could be
energy vampires. I call them energy vampires.
That's another good word for it. But I decided that it was time to let them go, like a bird in a cage, just open up the door and let them fly out.
Sure.
You know, I don't want to cage anybody. If that's the route they want to take,
Right.
that's their prerogative. I've got my own way of doing things.
Right.
So I decided, I took those things. I took the love of my family, my children, even my ex-husband that, you know, there's no man in my life anymore. The love of my fiance, to have somebody who consistently encourages you, even when other people are putting you down. The love of my father and my brother, where there was unconditional
Sure.
and always present. And I wrapped my own arms around me. And I got on Facebook. I chronicled all of it. I erased a lot of things because an employer was looking at me at one point, and he was a very public figure. But I really hunkered down and just started doing artwork, and I cried a lot to a lot of people. So many, many angels out there who listen to my tears. And
Well, we promised we wouldn't get into specifics about either one of our issues with domestic abuse, but let's talk about domestic abuse in general. You know, people who go through those situations tend to always be everybody almost blames them for it.
Right.
Or, you must have done something to deserve this. And you're always, talk to me about, as a woman, because I believe now, especially with same-sex partners and marriages on the horizon, we're going to see more men hitting men, more women hitting men, more women hitting women, and somehow for whatever reason we're trying to shut that conversation down, and that drives me crazy, because I was one of those people back in 2002 when I first came out that was in that situation. What are your thoughts about what someone who's in a domestic abuse situation should be doing?
okay, as far as for survival,
Just to survive. I mean, we know they need to get safe.
Okay.
We know there's places like Harbor House or Victim Service Center, but a lot of people don't want to do that. They don't want to
Okay.
make that phone call for whatever reason.
okay, I think that victims assess the situation. They know how much danger they are in, and they know how much they're being monitored. I think that some victims or survivors, we could call them, but while they're being victimized, they are victims, and that's the correct term.
Absolutely, right.
The best they could do is write on a piece of paper, I am living in a situation that in a home situation that scares me. Please just alert the police. Don't tell anybody else. And then hopefully we can get local law enforcement on board, that when there is an altercation, that this person is protected rather than harmed.
Well, that's interesting that you say that, because in my own situation, and it happened in this house, I was afraid to do that. I would go to the doctor with a black eye, and I would lie about how I got it.
Sure.
When the police would show up, and they've shown up at this house before, I would give them a different excuse every time.
Right.
I was fearful. I was
Right.
prepared to call 911, but I wasn't used to it. I didn't grow up fighting or
Right.
punching or any of this. I used my, words were all I had, to my defense. And so to be in the very first relationship that I was in, to be, looking across the room at someone that would rather hit you than love you, and it was a very awkward situation to be in, and we stay in those situations. That's what sucks. I don't get it.
Because, well, it's the biggest mind fuck you can have,
Absolutely.
Randy.
She said mind fucking. We can say that because this is not a censored show.
It is. It's the biggest mind fuck you can have. That somebody would lure you in, and make no mistake, these people who do engage in domestic violence know of the darkness in their own heart.
Absolutely.
Their families usually do too. We're the ones who don't know. And so what they do is they engage in a process of love bombing, and
Right.
they make you feel like you're wonderful. Now, as human beings, we can tend toward addictive behaviors.
Sure.
And we want to do what's familiar. And particularly under stress, this is an addictive behavior for me, okay, doing artwork, but it's a healthy addictive behavior, and hopefully we cope in healthy ways.
Right.
But one of the ways that we do is we go back to the anchor. Our anchor is our primary relationship. In that primary relationship, we have all kinds of biochemical things happening within ourselves that bond us to that human
Sure.
being. Under normal circumstances, this is healthy and wonderful, and we're so happy for you, Randy.
Absolutely.
But under abnormal circumstances, when you're dealing with somebody personality disordered with power and control issues, somebody who has a sense of grandiosity that tells them that they're allowed to do this,
Sure.
but a sense of low self-esteem that would want to tear down another human being.
Right.
We're dealing in some very, very enmeshed areas. You add to the mix property, children, nostalgia,
Sure.
wanting to
Oh,
work.
in my case, it was trying to get rid of them, trying to get them out of the house.
Right.
Because it wasn't that quite that simple. I wanted this person to be gone. I remember, there was one time where I really thought I was going to die. We had gone out to a club of all things, and there are times where I talk about this in front of audiences, and I talk about it like I'm talking about the color of the sky. And there are other times where it's almost like it just happened yesterday. But I remember I had this, before I had this home, I had a relatively large home out in West Orlando, behind gates, Jaguar in the driveway. You would have thought it was the perfect life. And I remember coming home, and we'd gotten into an argument at the club, and I had walked home, and it was miles to get back to where I lived. And I walk in this place that I think is safe, and this person literally beat the shit out of me in my own front yard, to the point that even once I got inside my house, because he pretended to pass out, and I called the sheriff, and the sheriff came to the gate because I had to let them in on the phone. And I can remember it quite well because all of a sudden he's out of this state of, whatever it was that he was in. And he's at the door and he's crying. And he's saying, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. And uniquely, before I let him in, because the cop is at the gate and I have to go to the gate to let him in, I catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror. And I don't even recognize myself. I have blood all over me and all these things. And I'm thinking, that's got to be enough, Randy. That has got to be a sign to you. And I go back to the door. I've let the sheriff come down the long drive. And they come to the door, and I said no. And I let him in. I let him back into the house. And I told the sheriff that I had fallen out by the pool area. And I lied. And, my mom was living there at the time, and she then kind of realized what had happened. And so you almost go into this state of, I must have done something wrong. Maybe I was looking at people on the dance floor. Maybe I did all these things because they make you seem like you're the lunatic.
Well, there are psychological tactics that abusers use up until that point.
Right.
Even if you have a relationship that looks like
I think they're watching us.
that looks like it's largely going well.
Right.
There are tactics that people like this use, and some of them are like gaslighting. Some of them are subtly bringing you down so that you start to depend on them for your own self-image. And it happens slowly and over time usually. So, people don't walk up with you, I'm going to abuse you, written across the forehead, and hi, I'm Maura, and punch you in the neck.
Punch in the neck,
It's not going to happen.
Right.
So we have to adapt. We have to adapt to the greatest loss that you can have, which is either, in my book, losing children, losing an intimate partner. And so that's a lot to deal with.
Right.
And you, as an empathic person, you don't want to bring that attention on your family or your household. You don't want the police involved, the courts involved.
Sure.
What you want to do is you want to say, hey, honey, there is a problem.
Right.
Look at me. I'm messed up.
Right.
Can we deal with it?
Right.
And that person says, anything, sweetheart, I love you so much.
And we listen to that.
And we listen to that. The thing is that my experience has been people like this target people who are usually have something they want, whether it's a social status or whatever. It could be money, could be anything. We have something, or just a smoke screen, because we're the ones who can talk to people. We're the ones who can connect to people
Right.
on an emotional level, and they can't.
Sure.
And that's part of their frustration and lack of thing. So I think it's important that victims not blame themselves, understand that they are not in their right minds,
Right.
and that's okay, that they may be able to think clearly enough to survive that situation, but not enough to leave it. And there can be a lot of losses that come with leaving a relationship.
Oh, absolutely. I had a very good friend in Jacksonville, Florida, used to coach me every day. He was one of the only people that knew about it. And one day I called him and I was telling him what had happened. And he said, this is probably going to be our last conversation. And in fact, it was. He goes, you are allowing this in your life and I'm tired of hearing about it. And it was that which was the catalyst that had me call that person's parents, have them come get him. And one of my friends said something very funny to me, because his car stayed here for a few weeks while he was back in another state. And they said, why is that car out there? I would have had that car towed to Dunkin' Donuts a long time ago. And you know what I did? The next day I called an auto transport company. I loaded everything that motherfucker owned up in that car, and I sent it back to West Virginia. Uniquely, I still hear from him from time to time. And that is creepy to me.
Yeah.
If for whatever reason, if he thinks that it makes sense to reach out to me after what I went through, to think that there would ever be an opportunity, I don't get that. So as we move away from that, I want to talk, you've actually now taken that pain that we've really explored, and you put it into what you're doing.
All of it, the pain, the passion, the emotions.
Each one of these has
love.
a name. So,
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if we can
Yes.
focus on each one, but kind of give us like some of the names and where you came with that.
What I look for in images that I decide to collage, and I used all recycled magazines. There's no paint in any of these pieces.
Right.
And I apply it with varnish. Is I attempt to bring about the emotions, the tender emotions I had that I didn't see out in the world when I was being abused and looking for help and searching for helpful people. So.
And when you say you were searching for helpful people
Yes.
that would listen to you, or people who could guide you?
No, because in order for somebody, depending on your socioeconomic status, et cetera, I was homeless.
Were you actually living on the street, living in your car, living with people?
I spent many nights in my car because the only option was another abusive situation.
I've done that too.
Uh-huh.
I've driven to the rest area outside of Orlando before and slept because it was easier and it was safer than to do that.
And
talk to us about this particular one and then give us the names. I think the names are kind of curious.
Okay.
Let's go back to the mermaid. Let's just start there.
The mermaid is called Catch Me If You Can.
Okay.
That was done post a breakup where somebody was stalking me.
Okay.
And I couldn't, he was constantly making threats that he was going to come after me. And then he was turning around on social media and telling everybody that I was doing the same to him.
Sure.
So I knew the truth. He knows the truth. And so I decided to do a mythologized, demonized, and celebrated creature.
Right.
In a mermaid. And mermaids have to do 300 years of good deeds in order to earn a human soul. Well, sometimes all we have to do is leave the relationship to regain our soul.
Right.
And
right.
so I thought a mermaid would be a wonderful tribute to that. So that's why I can't.
And what a lot of people can't see is that, I'm just fascinated. There's no brushwork here. This is all literally, I can't imagine how many magazines you have to look through to find every one of the words or every one of the colors that formulates an image like that. And trust me, I'm not like the Mr. Artist by any stretch of the imagination, but I can absolutely look at that and appreciate the amount of time. One of my good friends that is into art once said to me, if you can stare at a painting over and over again and never see the same thing, that's a great piece of art. And I would suggest that. So what is this one here?
This one is Liquid Courage, and I had moved to Park Avenue. That was my first safe and stable home that I was able to live in after the divorce, where I knew I was going to make it. I finally knew. My roommate took me in, said, you won't go hungry and you won't go without a roof over your head. Now that is the message that most survivors need to hear.
Say that again, because I think that's pretty powerful.
Okay, I think that a lot of times, like for me, I had the threat of being put in a custody battle that I wasn't able to afford. But for many of us, and at different times, all we need to hear as a survivor is, I won't let you go hungry, and I won't let you go without food in your tummy. And sometimes,
and wasn't it hard for you to admit that you needed that help?
It is extremely hard, and I think that the point at which I didn't care anymore is when I told you my give a damn was busted.
Yeah.
When my family died, and
everything. I'm stealing
yeah.
that. My give a damn is busted.
Nothing says more than that.
Yeah.
But I just knew that I had to come up with something in order to survive, and that I didn't care what anybody thought about me anymore. So why not just write what's on my heart and mind, even if it makes people uncomfortable? If it makes people uncomfortable, it's like, go follow your bliss, dude. You can unfollow me from Facebook. You can defriend me.
I say
you can
that
say,
all the
I'm not
time.
reading your
You don't
posts
like what
anymore.
I don't like what I'm writing?
Yeah.
Why are you on my page?
Yeah,
Get off my page.
Exactly. Go.
You don't like this show? You don't have to watch it.
I always say, get out of my hula hoop. Go.
I love it. Get out of my hula hoop.
Go hula hoop.
Absolutely.
And so I decided, where were we, Randy?
We're
We
just
go on tangents sometimes.
I'm just trying to let people know that your artwork is a reflection of the pain you've been through.
Yes, yeah. Well. So this is a happy time. This is where the community of Winter Park, and I really believe that Winter Park is a special town.
Sure.
Their logo is a peacock, which is perfect for that time because people like to dress up and strut around, and so
they all do put on a big hat.
This is my Winter Park peacock, and her name is Liquid Courage, and she's not actually Liquid Courage. The drink isn't the Liquid Courage. She is.
She is.
It's
and you were
not
pointing out something to me that I just think is interesting, how you were able to take the pink and reflect it into the top,
Yes.
which most people would have just found a picture of a piece, a glass of or martini or whatever that is, and plastered up there, and that'd be the end of their story. So I just think the way that the level of detail that you've placed in it. Now I know you've shown your art in many different places. What's the future hold for Maura? Where are you going with this? What do you want to do? What is, if you looked at the future, a year from now, 3 years from now, hopefully part of that I know would include having your children back in your life.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about the art. Where's Maura going?
Well, it's really exciting. After I decided to start doing this, I had a body of work, and that was obsessively created and from a place of love. I'm going to survive. I want to leave a legacy for my children. I want them to know me. I want them to look at this piece
Do your
and say,
children know about your art?
Yes, they do.
They do know. Okay,
they do.
So they know what mom's doing.
Yes,
okay.
They do. And my son is very supportive, and he's the one who actually encouraged me to start Brain Candy Art Company.
Okay.
We didn't have a name for it, but he was like, Mom, you need to get this out there. People need to see this.
Right.
And get a Facebook page. Well, I didn't want to put Maura Lucchese. Because Maura Lucchese, who knows Maura Lucchese?
Even I can't hardly pronounce the last name. I'm just going to call you Maura. Like
Yeah,
Oprah, Maura.
Yeah, I like that. That's
Sure.
Cool. So my son really encouraged that. And I've always told my children, use your pain. And they're musically inclined. My daughter is very, very good at the cello. Andy plays punk, pop, bass, guitar. And so they have taken the time and the energy to learn those instruments and to express themselves that way also.
Right.
So I chose visual arts and where were we again?
Well,
you got to refocus. I need to have lunch.
We're good. We're doing really good. I think we're about ready to wrap up, actually. I think that, one of the things, Maura, that I see in you as I watch you and look at your art and everything is just a huge amount of inspiration. The tragedies that you've been through would have ruined most people. And whether you're a man or a woman looking at everything that you've been through, that's a gift. I have a friend that's going through a heart situation right now. And the other day, he was almost died from it. And the other day I told him, I said, you know what, you're here because God wasn't ready to take you for the heart. He's ready to give you to somebody else for all this other stuff. And that's what's happening here. You had chances where you could have maybe even ended your life or just chose a different route or not to be a survivor. You could have chosen to become the victim. and you didn't. And I think that's what so hopefully people take away from this show today is how amazing that makes you,
I hope
especially
so.
in my eyes.
Thank you, darling. That's so sweet of you to say.
Oh, I don't date women anymore, so don't worry.
I thought you liked brunettes. I thought that's why I was on the show. No, but I wanted to say this, that I think that, you know, it's important for people to tune into their love and beauty thing, that as life hits you with negativity, and life will, and entropy is a fact of life, things decay, that we need to have the rebirth part of that, and we get to write that story. And that's
Right.
very, very important. So even if it's moment to moment, you have to continuously write that story. If you're going through acute pain, you have to write that story. And if you need help, you must reach out. You have to swallow your pride. You have to face reality. You have to weigh the risks. You sometimes have to take the death threats or the beating on the way out the door, but get yourself safe.
I think that's a wonderful message. I mean, no matter where you live in America, you know, we have local shelters here that we have obviously done some fundraising efforts for that are great resources. But no matter where you live, there are places where you can get safe. And I think you caught the word. That's so critical because, you know, a lot of times people will go to family members for the night and they'll come back the next day. Because I used to do that. I thought the steam was over. I thought the heat was gone. And then I would come back and it would just be another, you know, Long Island iced tea for him, or an insanity situation where he thought I was looking at someone wrong on the dance floor, and it would all trigger itself again. And it happens all the time.
Randy,
getting safe means getting away from that situation.
Yes.
Period.
And however you can do it, and it may take some time, that should be also, but absolutely that your life is worth losing everything else to gain it.
And you did.
Yes, it is worth it. And your story's not over because bad things happen to you, that you can inspire other people, and that was an unintended effect. So Brain Candy Art Company started on Facebook.
And Brain Candy Art Company, real clearly, that is where people can go find your art.
That's right. And that's where I do my work.
www.braincandyart?
No, it's just on Facebook.
Or is it just on Facebook?
And
Okay.
it's capital B, Brain, capital B, capital C, capital A, and then a small co. And if you don't put it in that way, it won't come up.
Okay.
But Brain Candy Art Company was all about empowering people. You know, I use images of women because I'm a woman, but I will start branching out into
You
images
need to
of
do
men.
men. You need
Yes.
you're right here.
Well,
Just make my nose a little small.
No. It's all about truth, Randy. No. But so I wound up discovered by an international curator 2 months after I put this out there. I'm going to be in Art Basel this year.
Oh, in Miami.
In Miami.
Oh my God, that is amazing.
Spectrum tent,
Fantastic.
Booth 105.
Can I stay in your room? Can I go with you?
Yes,
I'll be your.
let's have a big
I'll carry your
party.
purse around for you.
That
is an
we're gonna have a
amazing
blast.
accomplishment.
It is.
Fantastic. Good for you.
Yes, and I belong to an international collective of artists that uses recycled materials because Brain Candy is not just about helping people with domestic abuse, but it's also about saving our planet. It's about all kinds of things that edify people and put them in a position of empowerment. Because when we love other people, we should be coming from a place of empowerment.
Sure, absolutely.
A predator can smell blood in the water. They can find out if you know what your issue. Were you a fat little kid? Did your husband abuse?
I was Fat
Randy.
Randy.
Out there?
You said you were Fat Maura.
I was.
I still feel like Fat Randy.
I was like.
Do you feel like Fat Maura? But you're not fat, so you can't feel like.
I would say that, you know, I'm concerned. I keep an eye on my weight. People don't understand that.
Oh, it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, because I like to eat. I was raised Italian, and there, you know, growing up, there was no holds barred. So
Right.
as an adult, I need to exercise that self-discipline. But I think that's one of the biggest things in life is that if we learn how to harness all these things that are coming at us and things inside of us, outside, inside, intrinsic, extrinsic, if we harness those things and use them and create something productive, something beautiful, we tune into our love and beauty channel in life.
Right.
It's like we can do things that we never thought we could do, and
Right.
and we can not only that. For all the hate mail that I do get, I probably get for each one piece, I probably get 150
I agree with you on that.
say thank you for saying this, thank you.
Well, you know, Maura, thank you for doing the show with us today. Thank you for coming to the front porch. Thank you for being as beautiful on the inside as you are on the outside.
Oh, Randy.
You never know until you get a chance to talk to someone what their journey's been. And I know that the folks watching today are going to learn something from what you shared, and that power and that influence. And you know, the last message I'd like to leave to folks out there is, again, if you're in a situation where you feel fear or you feel concern about your personal welfare with someone that says that they love you, or if they're hurting you, get safe, get out of that situation. Don't make them angry. Find a way to do it creatively. Like in my case, I just shipped their car back home to West Virginia. But find a way to get out of that situation, because you could potentially be a statistic. So with that said, everyone, thank you for coming to Front Porch Chat with Randy and Friends. We'll be back again next Sunday at 11 with a brand new show. And we appreciate you being on the front porch. Bye.
Randy and Friends. First thing people should do, I would say, is start listening and shut up.
Don't say black on black crime. We had this conversation.
Everybody was like, whoa, he's not a cop, what's up?
The statistics are the statistics.
I'm no stranger to politics, but I'm bringing it to you with a twist. Whenever you hear us say the word politics, go ahead and drop it in.
I ran for office, right? I lost. It's a fact.
You know what? It's perhaps a socioeconomic education level issue.
Whatever community you're talking about, it's about people.
Okay, we understand the issues. So what are we going to do? We have to learn respect again.
Fine, you greedy bastard.
sell
Here's
it.
your $5.
That's a good one.
It's on this.
And I will say cheers to that.
Cheers.
Politics,
No,
yeah.
Real people, real discussions, and cocktails every Sunday at 11. So you drink coffee every day?
Yes.
Do you put Jack Daniels in it every time?
That gives me the boost I need.
Oh, jeez. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Front Porch Chat with Randy and Friends. As we do with every show, we've got Betty here to kind of give us her feedback on it. First of all, Betty, what did you think about Maura's art?
I love it. I like it all. Now, she gave that one a different name, I'm sure.
What would you call that
As
one?
I just told you, I think that looks like Marilyn Monroe.
That's what I see, too, is Marilyn Monroe when I see that.
Or me, even. In my younger days, that's the way I wore my hair, kind of flippy.
Well, you know, Mom, Maura's art all stems from things that have happened, and I know you were listening off camera. It all stems from things that were happening in her life, whether they be tragedy or triumph or, you know, just maintaining it and getting through it. And obviously, you witnessed me go through a domestic abuse situation, and knowing that Maura's been through tragedy and things like that. What are your feelings about that? 'Cause, you know, you were very fortunate. We were fortunate growing up that we didn't witness our family do those kind of things, and and to see someone come out like Maura has on the other side. What do you think about that?
I think that's very courageous in the first place. I do think that it teaches and helps other people going through the same type of domestic abuse or whatever it be in your life. You learn quite a bit when you listen to other people. So I think that's very good.
And I got to
Very
ask you a
educational.
question. You know, we met Maura, you met Maura for the first time when we went to Maxine's on Shine. And Maxine, that is a plug, and I expect a free glass of wine for that. We went to Maxine's on Shine, and Maura was there, and we got to talk to her. Would you have ever known by meeting her what she had been through?
Oh, by no means that would I have ever. No.
And I think that's kind of the messaging that we wanted to try to do in today's show, is that you, not only can you not judge a book by its cover,
Right.
you absolutely don't know what someone's going through when they're going through potentially tragedy.
That's very true.
Because you saw it, you witnessed
There-
the night that happened to me. You know, sometimes
Right.
I every once in a while I'll get an email or a message from him, and he pretends that almost like that never happened, or he should be forgiven for it.
Right,
And I can remember coming through the back door, and it was dark, and I had lost the key during that struggle in the front yard, and you not really knowing what had happened.
Right.
And then, of course, you've witnessed it here as well. And I
Well.
can't imagine what it's like for a family member or a parent
Mhm.
to see that type of struggle.
It's very upsetting when you can't seem to help your own child out of a situation. It's sad. You do the best you can, and you stand by that person that you love, and you try to help them to realize that they either need to get help for themselves, first of all, and then get out of the situation.
Easier said than done sometimes, right?
Right.
Well, I think we
so.
both
She
wish
very
Maura
much
a
so.
lot of success and reuniting and eventually having a very fruitful and passionate relationship with her children. She deserves that. Excited for the success that's on the horizon for her. And thank you, Betty, for your 2 cents.
Well, it's at least it's 2 cents.
2 cents.
Probably worth a lot
Rub
more
two.
than
Oh,
that.
it is. People like you better on the show than they do me.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know.
Anyway, thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining Front Porch Chat with Randy and friends, and we'll see you again soon on the porch. Bye.
Bye. Who's my drink?
Hello, everyone. I'm Randy Ross, and welcome to Front Porch Chat with Friends every Sunday at 11. Cocktails, conversation, politics, and don't forget to grab your favorite lounge chair.
Previously on the porch.
We're surrounded by art today. I know you guys display art in your restaurant.
Kurt and I are huge supporters of the arts in Orlando. That's why when we created Maxine's, it was about we wanted to change out the art every month, and we wanted to have live music, local music that have original music as well. And so that's why we're not just a restaurant.
Because you guys also have spices.
We have the spices. We have the Johnny Kebab 6-pack. So we have a 6-pack of all the spices, bread dipping, and our oil. And we sell it all on johnandshirleyscatering.com.
You don't hear of people sticking up people on the street to go get some pot. You do
I
for
never
heroin.
understood it.
Medicinal marijuana can help people all over across the board.
Keep me
You're not
busy
looking to
until-
run for anything. You're not going to tell us that today.
The Attorney General race isn't until 2018.
Oh, come
So we gotta get through
on.
2016.
Black on white, white on black. It needs to stop. I mean, once we
does.
get to that point in life, I think we can live in a decent society.
In the last couple of years, we hear about it more than we ever have heard about it. Hey, Regina, it's Randy Ross. How are you? And I know that there's been some challenges over in Paramount. I'm just curious what your perspective is.
There's things put in place by our own people to help them alleviate, some of the crimes and some of the social issues that we face.
Thank you for that. I'm gonna let you go and let you go back to your meeting. We're gonna kind of talk about what you just said, okay? So thank you very much.